Think Tank Watch. We're looking at Reem Ibrahim, a regular guest on the Storm Huntley and Jeremy Vine show, and today the subject is 5 years on from leaving Europe. I wonder what the mouthpiece for the Institute of Economic Affairs will say about how well Brexit is going.
Reem, you're from the Institute of Economic Affairs. How do you think it's going, Brexit?
Yeah, no, I think that Brexit itself has allowed us to have so many different levers pulled, but we haven't pulled those levers in the first place. So as a result of Brexit, we have so many different freedoms. We're able to join things like the CPTPP, which is a bit of a mouthful to say.
Rolls off the tongue.
It rolls off the tongue, which allows us to trade with so many different countries that we
Couldn't
otherwise
we trade with them before?
We couldn't have a free trade agreement with those countries because the European Union restricted us. Now,
the thing is, we already had a deal with nearly all of the countries in the CPTPP when we were part of the EU. Recently, we've just added New Zealand and Australia to our trade deals. So by joining, we only had fresh access to two other countries, Brunei and Malaysia. And the overall gain is expected to be about 0.08% of GDP over the next 10 years compared to the reduced growth of leaving the EU of 4%.
I would actually say there are so many different things that we could be doing after we left Brexit, after we left the European Union, but we haven't done those things. So, for example, we still impose tariffs and quotas on Moroccan tomatoes, which means that tomatoes in the UK are still very expensive, and we still have those regulations and those tariffs and quotas because of our legacy with the European Union. We often actually copycat legislation. So we often have new regulations imposed in Parliament that are actually copying the European Union.
That's all because 42% of the UK's exports are to Europe, so it's easier to make everything to the same regulations.
And actually, to Rachel Reeves' point about the customs union, out of all of the parts of the European Union that we could rejoin, for example, the single market, which would allow us to trade a lot more freely, the customs union is probably the worst of all of those parts. And actually, what we need to be thinking about is really taking advantage of those Brexit freedoms.
Brexit freedoms? Huh. Now for a complete load of piffle.
Now, to say that Brexit has damaged the British economy or ruined the British economy is just not true. We know that the difference in impact on imports and exports is basically unchanged in comparison to the European Union. A lot of the problems we face at the moment are as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the shocks as a result of the Ukraine-Russia war. So actually the current situation we face is definitely not as a result of Brexit, it's as a result of bad government policies.
Now, there's a lot of conflicting reports, with some saying that Britain is down by £27 billion through lost trade in the first 2 years after properly withdrawing from the EU in 2021. Obviously, the pandemic and Ukraine war have had an impact on our economy, but it's impossible to say that Brexit has not had some effect on our economy.
But actually, what's interesting is, Reem, I don't think you're saying that Brexit has been the grand success,
No,
because
we've not taken...
as many of people on the Brexit side of things seem to agree that the levers, as you call them, haven't been pulled that should have been pulled. Do you think that's the problem with Brexit, or Brexit fundamentally was never going to work?
No, I think we had pretty poor government in the shape of the Conservative government for quite a while after Brexit. But if you voted Brexit because you wanted to become wealthier, it's been a disaster. If you voted Brexit because you wanted to reduce immigration, it's been a disaster.
I mean, this is a really important point.
If you voted Brexit because you are particularly keen on sovereignty and as full independence as you can get as a country, then maybe you've achieved that. And I respect that as an argument, but let's please not pretend it hasn't made us poorer, and let's please not pretend it did anything to immigration levels other than them going higher up.
So we have a higher opportunity, a larger opportunity now than we did before Brexit to become wealthier, to actually do all of the wonderful things that we could be doing. We just haven't done that because we've had such poor governance.
But
ultimately, how Brexit would be implemented should have been part of any vote. The fact that those advocating for it seemed unaware that what they were promoting could easily have been blown off course shows that it was not the robust and sound prospect that they had us believe. Click here for more Think Tank Watch.